Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Arundhati Ramanan and these are the top headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. Sensex and Nifty end with minor gains after a range-bound session. Financial stocks lead with gains. 3 stocks advance for every 2 declining stocks. U.S. President Donald Trump announces a trade deal with Indonesia and says a deal with India is progressing along the same lines. U.S. will impose 19% tariffs on Indonesian goods, and Jakarta will not impose any tariffs on American goods. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is a very good candidate, but not the top choice to replace Jerome Powell as chairman of the Federal Reserve, says President Trump. JPMorgan's JamieDimon becomes the first top banker to speak out against Trump's attacks on the Fed, saying central bank independence is absolutely critical. The SBI board might approve launching a qualified institutional placement offer to raise up to 25,000 crore rupees. Sources say that LIC is likely to bid for shares worth over 5,000 crore rupees if approved by the board. Government likely to consider increasing the foreign direct investment limit for public sector banks. Sources say Indian banks need more capital and consolidation of PSU banks is not ruled out. That's an exclusive. Ola, Uber and drivers of other cab aggregators go on strike in Mumbai, demand implementation of aggregator rules and pay parity with regular taxi drivers. Prices rise on taxi apps as lack of drivers lead to surge pricing. Karnataka government issues a draft notification to cap prices at movie theatres and multiplexes at 200 rupees per ticket. If implemented, the move could dent the revenues and profits of PVR Inox. Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry claims 21 people were killed at a food distribution site in southern Gaza after tear gas firing, which led to a stampede. The aid center is run by U.S. Israel-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. President Trump says U.S. AttornyGeneral should release credible information on convicted sex offender Jeffery Epstein. U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson calls for the release of all Epstein files as Republicans face a rare backlash from their supporters. Those were the headlines that we're tracking for you this evening, but straight to the day's market action. The Sensex and Nifty ended with minor gains after a range-bound session. Nifty managed to remain above the 25,200 levels, while Sensex ended above 82,600. The market breadth favored advances. Nigel D'Souza is here with those highlights. Nigel, over to you.
Well, the buy on the dip strategy did work yet again in today's trading session. So the Nifty ended above the flat line, mildly in the green, but at one point of time we were down in today's trading session. So the Nifty more or less flattish. The outperformer in today's trading session, though, was the Nifty Bank. That did well, and surprise, surprise, even the other pillar of the market did well. That's the Nifty IT index. So both of them did well. But in the last few days, you've seen an outperformance coming from the broader markets. Even in today's trading session, you had a fair bit of winners. In fact, the number of stocks advancing outweighed the number of stocks that were declining. Though the broader market indices, both the mid and the small caps, they took a bit of a break today, both of them ending more or less flattish in today's session. From the Nifty pack itself, Wipro was one of the big gainers. That, in fact, was up more than 2% in trade. Mahindra and Mahindra, I'll tell you what, the street is sensing something on this particular name. Because in the last few trading sessions, you've seen continuous accumulation on this particular name. And SBI could very well be raising some money by the QIP route. That explains why that one as well was quite strong, up close to around 2%. However, there were a couple of stocks that were under pressure. HDB Financial, the numbers looked a little bit softish, and they sounded a little bit cautious on the CV sector. And because of that, Shriram Transport was under the weather. That ended with a cut of close to around 2%. So some kind of rub-off out there. On the flip side, you had strong numbers and strong outlook coming in from Network 18. Do note standard disclosure with regard to that, but that stock was up more than 10%. South-based cement companies, they have been buzzing around on expectations of a better than expected showing in Q1 FY26 because prices have moved up the steepest out there. And also there is buzz of some kind of consolidation. So that pack did well. The other buzzers from very different sides of the spectrum. Tilak Nagar, well, that was dancing away. That was up more than 10%. And Coffee Day was locked up close to around 10%. So both of them did pretty well. So there is a fair bit of action in the broader markets, but I think in the near term, the Nifty continues to remain in that band. On the downside, we're closer to that range, 24,950, which is around the 50 DMA. It's closer to the recent lows as well. While on the upside, the 25,500, it seems you're in a band. Results will be important, and what goes on in terms of the global cues, particularly on the tariffs front, as well as what the Fed has to do from here on.
Absolutely, Nigel. Many thanks for those details. Now, US President Donald Trump has hinted at a deal between India and the USA that would grant American exporters access to India's markets. He also said that the deal would be similar to the one with Indonesia. Washington reached a trade deal with Jakarta, which will see US impose 19% tariffs on Indonesian goods, down from the earlier 32% threat. Trump has said that Indonesia will charge no duties on American goods under this deal.
So we made a deal with Indonesia. I spoke to their really great president, very popular, very strong, smart, and we made the deal. We have full access to Indonesia, everything. As you know, Indonesia is very strong on copper, but we have full access to everything. We will pay no tariffs. So they are giving us access into Indonesia, which we never had. That's probably the biggest part of the deal. And the other part is they are going to pay 19%, and we are going to pay nothing. I think it's a good deal for both parties, but we will have full access into Indonesia.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte warned Brazil, China and India that they could be hit very hard by secondary sanctions if they continue to do business with Russia. Rutte told the leaders of the three nations to call Russian President Vladimir Putin and push for serious peace talks with Ukraine. This after President Donald Trump threatened secondary tariffs of 100% on the buyers of Russian exports unless there is a peace deal in 50 days.
Listen, if you are the president of China or the prime minister of India or the president of Brazil and you are still trading with the Russians and getting the oil and the gas in and you sometimes even resell it for a higher price, know that if this guy in Moscow doesn't get serious about peace talks, I will slam secondary sanctions on you of 100%. So I'm sure they don't know yet what hit them. This will take some time to sink in, and I think you guys making this clear in the media, the senators maybe also discussing this with their counterparts in Brazil, India, China, will be very helpful to put maximum pressure on Russia.
US President Donald Trump has also said that he may impose tariffs on pharmaceutical products as soon as the end of this month. The president added that US will start with a low tariff and give pharma companies a year to bring manufacturing back to the US. He will then announce very high tariffs. Trump also said his timeline for implementing tariffs on semiconductors was similar.
Pharmaceuticals will be tariffed probably at the end of the month. And we're going to start off with a low tariff and give the pharmaceutical companies a year or so to build, and then we're going to make it a very high tariff because we got to move them in. Look, there's two ways you do it. You make money or you have them move here so they don't have to pay the tariff. Those are the two ways. The pharmaceutical companies are moving back to America where they should be.
US President Donald Trump has said that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is among the people who are being considered to replace Jerome Powell as the chairman of the Federal Reserve. However, Trump added that he likes the job that Bessent is doing currently, and hence he is not among the top choices. Yesterday, Bessent had confirmed that the process to appoint the next Federal Reserve chair has begun. President Trump has repeatedly criticized Powell and pressurized him to cut interest rates.
Scott Bessent, your Treasury Secretary, your number one option whenever Jerome Powell leaves or...
Well, he's an option.
Is he your top?
And he's very good. Well, he's not because I like the job he's doing. Right. That's why he's not been developer. I like the job. I don't know if he was on the plan. Was he not the plan? Maybe he wasn't. But I do like the job he's done. Right. So in that sense, probably he's not that much of an option. Right. Scott's been great. He's been terrific.
And speaking of the Fed, JPMorgan CEO JamieDimon has defended the independence of the Fed chair, saying that is absolutely critical. He said, and I quote, "Playing around with the Fed can often have adverse consequences, the absolute opposite of what you might be hoping for," end of quote. Dimon became the first leader of a major U.S. financial institution to address the Trump administration's attacks on Powell. Speaking during the bank's earnings call, Dimon also warned that Trump's tariff policies pose significant risks to the U.S. economy. Take a look. Time now from a CNBC TV 18 exclusive. The government is likely to consider increasing the foreign direct investment limit for public sector banks. Government sources tell CNBC TV 18 that Indian banks need more capital and a consolidation of PSU banks is not ruled out. Sapna Das joins us now with the details. Sapna, what are you picking up from your sources?
Well, I think the intent of the government is pretty much clear. They want to have larger and bigger banks, and probably one of the ways to do that is to look at the next round of public sector bank mergers. Now, that may be feasible among some of these smaller entities in the PSB space. We are aware of the fact that the last merger round took place in 2019, and looking at the massive changes that have happened in the banking ecosystem, probably PSB merger round 2 is something that the government is likely to mull on. That's one. Second, they may also look at consolidation among the 100% government-owned insurance companies. There had been a lot of talk and discussion, a few years back. Probably that concept is back at the drawing table. We'll have to wait and watch and see how this works out and what are the timelines that the government is talking about. Last but not the least, and probably one of the most significant, that is basically to attract more foreign capital. It may also be likely that the government could look at revising or raising the foreign investment cap of 20% for public sector banks. Now, since time immemorial, this cap has really not moved, and irrespective of the fact that there could be enough threshold available even currently for FIS to invest, but the fact remains that as a signal and also in an attempt to garner more capital, something may be possible on that front. Some kind of tweaking, some kind of raising of the limit is something the government may look at. So these are big steps which are part of a financial sector reform agenda to prepare India for a Viksit Bharat. We'll have to wait and watch and see how this really works out.
Right, Sapna, many thanks for those details. Now, shares of RBL Bank continue to rise amid reports of potential investment from Dubai-based Emirates NBD Bank. Yesterday, the RBI governor told CNBC TV 18 not allowing foreign banks to own a 26% stake in Indian banks defies logic. In an exclusive interview, governor said RBI will examine cases if any requests are made. Governor was answering a question in the context of RBL Bank and others which have seen interest from foreign investors. Mutual funds and foreign portfolio investors have been steadily increasing their stake in RBL Bank. From 15% stake in March, mutual funds now own more than 29% stake. Foreign portfolio investors own more than 17%, while the shareholding of retail investors has declined from more than 38% to 28%. Here is the governor on allowing FDI into Indian banks.
There are two foreign banks wanting to buy stakes in Indian banks. SMBC, the announcement from Yes Bank has already come and they are awaiting your permission. Right. Now, hitherto RBI had only given permission to foreign banks to cross that 15% when the bank was in trouble, like in Catholic Syrian's case or in Lakshmi Vilas, where of course DBS bought the whole bank. Now, Yes Bank, you have the odd situation of State Bank having its own banking license and owning 24% in Yes Bank. So, RBI probably wants that to end. But in the case of RBL, we understand NBD is very interested. So what is, first of all, have the cases come to you? And more importantly, if you are going to give permission, like even IDBI is apparently, the interested parties all want 26%. So as a rule, will you want to change from 15 to 26?
See, as per the FDI policy, the foreign banks are allowed up to 74%.
Yes.
All right. And the foreign banks can actually start business in our country 100%. As even up to 100%. So that's even more than 74%.
But they don't want that. They want to get into, established Indian banks.
Yeah. So Indian promoters are already allowed up to even more than 26% stake to be brought down to 26% stake within a period of 15 years.
Yeah.
Voting rights, of course, because of the Banking Regulation Act, cannot be, even if the share financial stake is more than 26%, cannot be more than 26%. So even foreign banks can certainly have 26% stake, economic interest, voting rights.
Yeah.
There should not be any difficulty in them having up to 26% stake in a bank, in an Indian bank.
Okay. No, it's just that until now it was only given.
They have not come. So we have not, your question as to whether some cases have come to us for having 26%, they have not. Mm-hmm. But if they come, we will certainly, we are already reviewing the policy, as you are saying. There is some kind of clarity is not there, some ambiguity is there, as you are saying. No, we'll try to bring in, these clarifications and bring clarity. in these guidelines.
Okay. And no, until now at 15%, it was kind of a hard stop. And case by case, Reserve Bank was allowing. So I'm just asking if that 15% hard stop.
As I mentioned to you, for foreign banks, they can go up to 100%. Okay. So if you don't allow them even 26%, that kind of seems to defy logic.
HDFC Bank's board will meet on July 19 to consider issuing bonus shares and a special interim dividend for FY26. If approved, this would be the bank's first ever bonus issue. The decision will also be subject to regulatory approvals. The HDFC Bank stock has surged more than 23% over the past year. The SBI board might approve launching a qualified institutional placement offer to raise up to 25,000 crore rupees. Sources say that LIC is likely to bid for shares worth over 5,000 crore rupees if the QIP is approved by the board. The banker is expected to offer a slight discount to the current market price for the issue. The Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs is likely to allow coal PSU NLC India to invest further in renewable energy. Sources tell CNBC TV 18 that the approval will allow NLC to exceed the permitted investment threshold in a joint venture. NLC India's shares surged following the news. Shares of Network 18 rallied as much as 15% after the company posted strong numbers in the June quarter. Net profit standalone stood at 516 crore rupees. However, revenue saw a dip due to a high base from last year's election-linked advertisements. June quarter EBITDA increased by 69%. A standard disclaimer, CNBC TV 18, the channel you are watching, is a part of the Network 18 group. Jio BlackRock has secured approval from SEBI to launch 4 passive index funds. These include 3 equity-linked funds tracking Nifty Midcap 150, Nifty Small Cap 250 and Nifty Next 50. The 4th fund is a debt-focused fund that will track Indian government bonds with 8 to 13 years maturity. Earlier this month, the AMC had also raised nearly 18,000 crore rupees across its debut debt schemes. Uber and Ola drivers and other gig economy workers across Maharashtra staged a flash protest at Azad Maidan. The drivers' demands include pay parity with taxi drivers. Rachna Dhanrajani joins us now with more details. Rachna?
If you've been struggling to book a cab via Ola, Uber, Rapido in Mumbai in the last 24 hours, then you're not alone. Because either the rides are just available or the wait time is too long, or even if you manage to get a ride, the prices are way too high. Now, all of this is because the drivers are on strike of these cab aggregators. They started on Tuesday, that was yesterday, where there was a gathering that was held at the Azad Maidan, and these drivers got together and listed out a charter of demands. Now, these demands include rationalization of fares, a blanket ban on bike taxis operating on a white plate, urgent implementation of the Maharashtra Gig Workers Act and the activation of the Drivers Welfare Board. Now, all of this was already notified under the MVA guidelines that were issued earlier this month. So, while these associations are happy with the guidelines, what these drivers are demanding is more clarity. One major thing that they're asking for clarity is about the insurance bit that the MVA guidelines came with on 1st of July. The MVA guidelines suggest that the aggregators are supposed to provide insurance to these drivers, but how and what would be the amount and how would be the payout, how would the drivers access it, all of that remains in the unknown, and which is what the clarity is being demanded for. Another major point that these drivers have demanded is uniform policy centrally and not just state-wise, because the MVA suggests that the states come up with the base fare and that's how the fares would move forward. But what the drivers want is a central policy than a state-wise policy. What they're suggesting is what the policies in Maharashtra should be similar to what it is in Telangana or Karnataka. So while they welcome the new guidelines that the MVA guidelines came from the Department of Road and Transport, but what they want is more clarity and clarification than just policy on paper.
All right, Rachna, thank you so much for those details. On that note, it is time for us to head into a short break. But coming up next, Karnataka government proposes to cap prices at movie theatres and multiplexes at 200 rupees per ticket. Details in just a bit. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still with us on Business 360. At least 21 people were killed, including 15 from a stampede and suffocation due to tear gas being fired at Palestinians seeking food. The incident took place at one of the Gaza humanitarian foundations and distribution hubs. This as the Israeli army's attacks killed over 90 Palestinians in the last 24 hours. Ukraine has said that Russia launched 400 missiles across cities overnight. Ukrainian President Zelensky said that the large-scale long-range attacks targeted energy infrastructures. Local officials have said that at least 2 people have been killed in the overnight strikes. U.S. President Donald Trump's top ally, House Speaker Mike Johnson, has urged the Justice Department to release documents related to the Jeffery Epstein case. Johnson is the latest addition to conservatives who have been calling for full transparency in the high-profile case. The U.S. Justice Department ruled Epstein's 2019 death a suicide and refused to release his alleged clients' list last week. Reacting to it, the U.S. president said that he doesn't understand why anyone would be interested in the case, calling it sordid but boring.
The credible information's been given. Don't forget, we went through years of the Mueller witch hunt and all of the different things, the Steele dossier, which was all fake. All that information was fake. But I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring.
The Karnataka government has issued a draft notification proposing a cap on movie ticket prices across the state. The draft rule set a maximum ticket price of 200 rupees per show for all films, inclusive of entertainment tax. The government has invited public feedback within 15 days from the date of publication. Shilpa Ranipeta is here with all of those details. Shilpa, how will this move sort of impact multiplex chains?
Well, the big screen might be getting more pocket-friendly in Karnataka, but it's not such a happy ending for multiplex chains like PVR Inox, which is the largest in the country. Now, the Karnataka government, like you mentioned, has proposed a 200 rupee cap inclusive of taxes for movie tickets at all movie theatres and multiplexes, and that move could impact both revenues and margins for India's largest cinema operator, PVR Inox. Now, let me explain why. Now, if implemented, this cap could bring Karnataka in line with other states like Tamil Nadu, where ticket prices are already capped at about 150 rupees, excluding GST and other taxes. In Andhra Pradesh, where regular seats are priced and capped at 177. Meanwhile, Telangana also is slightly on the higher side, allowing tickets up to 295 for regular seats and up to 350 for recliners. Now, Karnataka, though, is a key market for PVR Inox. It contributes about 10% to its revenues with about 215 screens. That is 12.3% of its total footprint currently. Now, the average ticket price also, or the ATP in Karnataka, stands at 260 rupees. Now, the proposed cap could slash this by nearly 30%, triggering a 3.7% dip in PVR Inox overall ATP and potentially also cut revenues by about 2.2% and EBITDA by about 1.8% over FY26 to FY28. Now, analysts say that this could also impact PVR Inox's expansion plans, especially for premium formats like IMAX and 4DX in Bangalore, where weekend ticket prices often cross, 600 rupees and more as well. Now, a flat cap might also delay returns on these high investment formats. Now, as a result of this, PVR may lean more on food and beverage sales, which is a high margin business for it, even more to make money. Now, if you look at the larger context also, the move comes at a time where PVR Inox is increasing its focus on South India. Currently, 33% of its total screens and roughly 25% of its revenues are from the entire region. Now, it's a key market for expansion. In FY25 alone, 35 out of the 77 new screens that were opened in the south. Now, why? Because this is one of the regions that delivers higher occupancy, especially at a time where occupancy is still limping back post-COVID. And not to forget, some of the biggest hits, think Bahubali, RRR, Pushpa 2 and more, and KGF, all of these are from the south. Now, the Karnataka government has opened the draft notification for public feedback for about 15 days, after which the final call might be taken. Now, if implemented, definitely good news for consumers, but you will still have to shell out a lot more for that popcorn and Coke. Back to you.
All right, Shilpa, many thanks for taking us through those details. Now, a team from international fashion brand Prada visited Kolhapur to learn about the tradition of making Kolhapuri chappals. The Italian fashion house's designers met the Kolhapuri chappal craftsmen to learn about the nuances of the tradition. This visit comes after Prada faced backlash for showcasing sandals resembling Kolhapuri chappals in its spring-summer 2026 men's collection. Meanwhile, Bombay High Court dismissed a PIL filed by 5 advocates over the alleged unauthorized use of the design. Lotus beds have reappeared at Kashmir's Wular Lake 30 years after a devastating flood had wreaked havoc on its ecosystem. What you can see on your screens are a carpet of lotus beds in full bloom. The flood deposited a large quantity of silt in that lake that buried the lotus vegetation over the years. However, owing to the conservation efforts, the lotus buds have reappeared. Located in Bandipora, Wular is Asia's second largest freshwater lake. And with that, it is a wrap on this edition of Business 360. More news and updates continue right here on CNBC TV 18.